A very good morning, children. Hope you're following the online sessions regularly. So, in the last session, we have finished our sixth unit. Okay, and now we are going to enter into the seventh unit, that is different ecosystems. So, before going to the different ecosystems, we need to remember a few terms which we have already learned in the class 6th. Hope you remember all those definitions and also the terms which I'm going to tell now. Okay, the first one is the habitat. What is habitat? It is the dwelling place. It is the dwelling place of living organisms. Okay, so it's a dwelling place of living organisms. Living organisms in the sense you can get the plants and also animals. So both plants and animals, okay, the place where they dwell, the place where they live, it is called as the habitat. Okay, now the second one is, now what are the things which are in the habitat? Okay, now you can see the living organisms and also non-living things in the habitat. So what is habitat? Habitat is nothing but it is a dwelling place. Dwelling in the sense the place where somebody lives is called as a dwelling place. Okay, a kind of residence, right? So here when you come to the word called as habitat, it is a dwelling place of the living organisms such as the plants and animals. So that dwelling place is called as the habitat. Now habitat in the sense here, right? Now what are things which are there in the habitat? There are two things, right? One is the living organisms are there in the habitat, and also even non-living organisms also comes under the habitat. So there are living organisms as well as the non-living organisms. Now, and one more thing you have to remember is that one particular habitat doesn't belong to one particular group of organisms. For example, if you take a small park, okay, do you think only butterflies live in that park? Okay? Now, what are the animals which live in the park? Just try to remember what are things you can see what are the living organisms you can see in the park. You can see plants, you can see dragonflies, you can see butterflies, you can see the little insects and all. You can see some dogs, you can see some other animals. So like it is not like a habitat is not only a dwelling place of one particular group of organisms. Okay, so you can find several groups of organisms, otherwise you can say different types of organisms lives in the habitat. Okay, so habitat is a place, okay, it's a dwelling place of different types of organisms including the plants also. Okay, so these are the things which we have already learned in our lower classes. There are two children whose names are Gayatri and Venkatesh. So these two are the school children. Now they got a doubt because they have learned another word on the day, and the word is the ecosystem. So now they got a doubt that whether this ecosystem and the habitat are they same? Is the word ecosystem exactly means what is habitat? So that is what a kind of doubt they have got in their minds. So children, this kind of doubt might have also now come into your minds. If you really remember the word called as habitat, and now we are talking about the ecosystem. So the doubt is whether this ecosystem and habitat, are they both same or are they different from one another? Now the same kind of doubt has got in the minds of Gayatri and Venkatesh, okay, who are the school children. So here, now what we are going to try to understand here in this particular session is, we are going to clear the doubt whether this ecosystem is equal to habitat or are they both different terms. Okay, so now coming to the ecosystem. This ecosystem, the word ecosystem was coined by the word ecosystem was coined by a British ecologist and also botanist. a British ecologist and also botanist whose name is A.G. Tansley. A.G. Tansley. Okay. Now, he described the word ecosystem to describe and he said that it is the basic unit of the nature. Okay. So now here, what we will understand from this particular topic is here, now there is a British ecologist and also a botanist. Okay, ecologist in the sense who studies the ecology. Okay, what is ecology? That is a relationship between the environment and the living organisms. That is called as the ecology. So the person who studies ecology is called as a ecologist. Okay, and then he was also a botanist. Who is a botanist who studies the plants is called as a botanist. Okay, so this Tansley, there is A.G. Tansley, who is a British ecologist and also botanist. He is the first person to coin this term, which is called as the ecosystem. Actually, he has reduced a word which is called as ecological system. There is a word called as ecological system. He reduced this word. That means he modified this word. He removed this logical and then he made it as the ecosystem. He made this word as the ecosystem. So, who coined the word ecosystem? Okay, that is the British ecologist and botanist who is A.G. Tansley. He is the person who coined the word ecosystem. Now, according to him, according to Tansley, what his intention is that now whatever the living organisms which are there on the face of earth, okay, whatever the living organisms are there on the earth, they are influenced, okay, they are influenced and also they are dependent upon the non-living things. Okay, so now what his explanation was, like now what his intention was, that the living organisms, they really influence the non-living things. Okay, they are influenced by the non-living things, and that is how the nature works. The nature will not work only because of the living organisms, only because of the plants and animals. The nature will not work. They have to depend upon the non-living things also, so that the nature will work. Okay, we will have a very clear explanation of all these things and all in the coming session, paragraphs and all. But now you try to remember this particular part, right? So living things, okay, they are influenced by the non-living things, so that the nature will work. Otherwise, nature will not work. Okay, that is what is said by whom? A.G. Tansley. So not only Tansley, but also there are some other ecologists who also worked on knowing the relationship between the living organisms and also their environment. Okay, they also made a research. They also studied the living organisms and also the kind of environment around them and the relationship between the living organisms and the environment, and that is how they use the different terms which are called as the biome, okay, habitat, and also ecological system. So all these three, they were used by different scientists, different ecologists, to study the relationship of the living organisms with the environment. So that is how they started this work. Till then, people like ecologists were studying this particular nature on the basis of the interrelationships. Okay, they were mostly studying about the interrelationships between the larger groups and also the smaller groups. The smaller groups, they call it as the habitats, and the larger groups, they call it as the biome. So they were actually studying the kind of dependency, the kind of relationship between the smaller groups and the larger groups. Relationships are there. They all should be studied under the ecosystem. So how the animals are dependent on the plants, and how the plants are dependent on the animals, how they are dependent on the environment, how they are dependent upon the nature. So all these things, they have to study under one word, that is the ecosystem. So that is how Tansley has started his work. Especially when you come to the ecosystem, here in the ecosystem, what we especially learn is that different organisms will start coming into the habitat, and some of the organisms will go out of the habitat. To understand this more better, what we can do is we can do a small project work. You go to a park and you select a particular area. Okay, you select a particular area, and you just tie some threads around that, and you make a square kind of thing, and then you observe what are the organisms which are living there, what are the organisms which are coming into that particular square, and also what are the organisms which are going away from that. Okay, what kind of animals are living there, okay, making it as a habitat. You might see a tree where there are some birds on that. Okay, you might see some of the insects which are eating the grass. Okay, you might see some of the dragonflies, you can see some of the butterflies, okay, which are roaming over there. So like this, you can see number of organisms which are living in that particular habitat. Okay, they have made that particular place as their own habitat. Okay, children. So now, if you take all these things into consideration, what are the things we are going to learn from this particular part? That is what we are going to see now. So here, if you observe it very carefully, we will be able to know that ecosystem. Okay, let me write this for you. So here it's very much clear that ecosystem is made up of the living organisms and also their environment. Okay, children. So ecosystem is nothing but, okay, what you will study in this ecosystem, okay, it's nothing but the living organisms and their environment. So that is what we basically study in this. When you come to the living organisms, like plants, animals, and also all the micro organisms will come under the living organisms. Okay, all the plants and the animals and also the microorganisms come under the living organisms. And when you talk about now these are called as the biotic components. Biotic in the sense, bio in the sense life. That means the organisms which have life in them, they are called as the biotic components. Okay, so that means plant has life in them, animals have life in them, and even microorganisms also has life in them. That's why they are called as the biotic components. And now coming to the environment. Okay, soil, air, water, and sunlight. All these are the things, which are related to the environment. Okay, and that's why these are called as they don't have life in them. That's why they are called as the abiotic components. That means, okay, the environment has right now as soil, air and water and sunlight as an examples, and now these are called as the abiotic components. When you talk about the living organisms, you have the plants, animals and microorganisms, which we call them as the biotic components. So these are the two right now which are in the ecosystem. That means ecosystem, here you can see in simple word that ecosystem is made up of the biotic and abiotic components. So now what are biotic components? Plants, animals and microorganisms. What are abiotic components? Soil, air, water and sunlight are the abiotic components. So now what is ecosystem? Ecosystem is made up of biotic and abiotic components. So that is how we can come to a conclusion of what an ecosystem is. So is it different from habitat? So what we have learned, habitat is only a dwelling place of the living organisms, isn't it? So now, is habitat different from the ecosystem or not? Yes, it is absolutely different from the ecosystem. So whereas habitat, you will not find the abiotic factors, you will not find the environmental factors. Okay, so when you talk about the habitat, you only talk about the living organisms, you will not talk about the soil or water or the sunlight or the air. Okay, that is how they are completely different from the other, ecosystem. So habitat and ecosystem both are completely different from each other. Okay, children. Okay, children, by this we come to the end of today's session and all. Tomorrow, what we will see is the interdependence among the biotic components. How biotic components are dependent on each other, right? So, what do you mean by biotic components? Plants, animals, and microorganisms. So, how they are dependent on each other. That is what we are going to see in tomorrow's class. Until then, see you all. Take care. Have a great day.